The reason you have the calendars is because we're going to look at the concept of why in Chutz La'aretz, V'tein talu matar livracha is December 4th or December 5th, as opposed to, is that in the way? I'm sorry. December 4th or December 5th, as opposed to Eretz Yisrael when it is 7 Mar Cheshvan. This is sort of, we mentioned this last week in the conclusion of the Gemara that we mentioned last week, which was Nahara Pashte, that each river goes its own, its own way, that every community has its own particular minhag, and they're obligated to follow those minhagim. So if you remember 2 weeks ago, we discussed the concept of, in light of going from one community to another community, let's say from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael, and where they did shechita on the animals. So we spoke about this idea of going from one community that is saying V'tein talu matar livracha, and one community that is not saying it. But the question essentially is, okay, we understand why in Eretz Yisrael we say the community starts saying V'tein talu matar livracha 7 Mar Cheshvan. But just before we start, make sure, why? Why did they do that in Eretz Yisrael?
Rainy season?
Well, the rainy season. When is the rainy season?
We start asking right after Sukkot. So
right, so we start asking, right, we start, and I think Sfardim have the same minhag, that we say Mashiva Ruach HaMorid HaGashem on Shmini Atzeres. On Shmini Atzeres, right? Musaf Shmini, everybody does that, right? Musaf Shmini Atzeres. That is the time of the rainy season in Eretz Yisrael. However, we don't start asking for rain in the bracha of Barech Hashanim, right? We don't start asking for rain until 7 Mar Cheshvan. 7 Mar Cheshvan. What date is Shmini Atzeres? So Sukkot begins on the 15th. So 7 days later is 22. And we wait until 7 Mar Cheshvan, which is approximately 2 weeks afterwards. Why? Like, why don't we start saying V'tein talu? If we say Mashiva Ruach HaMorid HaGashem,
back in the day, you wanted everyone to leave.
So not everyone to leave Eretz Yisrael, but we wanted to give people who had come to Yerushalayim for Aliyah L'Regel, we wanted to give them a chance to get back to their homes, right? So for 2 weeks after the start of the rainy season, we didn't ask Hashem to send rain, because we wanted to give the people who were Ola L'Regel a chance to get back to their homes. Okay, so what happens to us in America, or what happens to Jews in Europe, or wherever, right? That only in Eretz Yisrael do the Jews start saying V'tein talu matar livracha on 7 Mar Cheshvan. We start saying it on December 4th or December 5th. So what I like to do, at least for the beginning of the shir, is to explain where that comes from. We're going to be hitting it very soon, so to explain where that comes from. So the Gemara basically says that that Eretz Yisrael, which is a higher land, is more dependent on rain at an earlier date than Bavel, which is a lower land. And therefore, since Bavel was a lower land, they had a greater reserve of water, and therefore they didn't depend on rain as early and as significantly as Eretz Yisrael did. So the time of asking for rain, the rainy season in Eretz Yisrael began on...
We're not talking Kedusha higher, we're talking physically.
Well, I mean, yes, Kedusha higher also, but we're talking about physical elevation, right? Physical elevation. So, and also Eretz Yisrael is a hilly, right, more of a hilly country, so we have that consideration as well. Now, Bavel, which didn't need the rain as early, we began asking in Bavel at a different date. What was that different date? So that different date was decided by Chazal to be 60 days following Tekufas Tishrei. 60 days following Tekufas Tishrei. What is Tekufas Tishrei? What does that mean? So we know that the year, we're all familiar with the year being divided up into 4 seasons, right? spring, summer, fall, winter, however you want, wherever you want to start. It's divided up into fall seasons. What are those seasons based on? Because remember, our seasons are just the opposite. If you live in South Africa or Australia, let's say, our spring is your fall, our summer is your winter. So the seasons, what marks this demarcation for us of seasons? Anybody have any idea?
What's the nature of the question?
So
is this
the nature,
a scientific question?
yes, a scientific,
where is
yes,
the sun on its where's the
correct,
earth on its axis?
scientific,
Where's the sun?
right? A scientific question. What phenomenon, what scientific phenomenon is responsible for our dividing the year up into seasons loosely?
Well, we have these equinoxes, and we have the rotation of the earth around the sun for the year. We have different angles at which it.
Okay, so correct, right? The relationship of the earth to the sun is what is responsible for these different seasons. And although the transitions are gradual, we mark the transitions at particular times. Those times are known as equinoxes and solstices, or solstice. I'm not sure what the correct, right? Solstices, I guess, is the correct plural. Equinox and solstice. What is it? What is the equinox and what is the solstice? So the equinox is the time when there is exactly the same number of hours of daylight and the same number of hours of nighttime. That's what equinox means, equal night. The day and the night are equal. So when the relationship between the sun and the earth is the earth is relatively completely straight on its axis, and the sun is pretty much shining directly at the equator of the earth. So that will mean that there will be equal periods of day and night, right? We will have equal periods of day and night because as the earth spins. Solstice, what is the solstice? So there is the equinox, there is an autumnal equinox, right? An autumnal equinox, which is the beginning of autumn, if you will, the beginning of fall, right? And a vernal equinox, which is the beginning of spring, okay? So at the time of the autumnal equinox and at the time of the vernal equinox, that day which begins fall and that day which begins spring, theoretically, we should have an equal amount of hours of day and night. Doesn't work 100%, but pretty much it works. Okay. Now, what are the alternate points of time? Those are the equinoxes. What are the alternate points of time?
Night is as long as it is, or
That
one day
right.
is as
The
long
longest night and the shortest night, or the shortest day and the longest day, right? Depending upon how you look at it, depending upon where you are on Earth, right? That's what it. So when for us here in the northern hemisphere, when is the longest day?
December 21 is the shortest.
No,
and
longest
that's
day is in
June
June, like June
21.
20,
Right.
21st.
So the longest day is referred to as the summer solstice. The summer solstice in June, I don't remember the exact date, right? That is the summer solstice. Now for us, remember, our day is as long as it gets, but in the southern hemisphere, it's their longest night, right? So it's our summer solstice, but for them it is not their summer solstice, it's their winter solstice. Mm-hmm. Okay? And vice versa. Okay. These dates, when they fall out on the Jewish calendar, are given in the Gemara the name of Tekufa, and whichever Hebrew month they generally fall out on. So we're going to focus on the autumnal or the fall equinox, right, which happens generally in the month of Tishrei, and therefore it is called the beginning of, it's Tekufas Tishrei, the beginning of Tekufas Tishrei. So we say we wait for 60 days after Tekufas Tishrei. And 60 days after Tekufas Tishrei is the time when we begin saying V'tein Tal Umatar Livracha. Okay? Now, you might want to ask me why 60 days after Tekufas Tishrei? Why not 55 days or why not 65 days? So the answer that I have to give you is I have no idea. Could not find anywhere why everybody says it's 60 days, right? All of the Makoros say 60 days, but no particular explanation as to why it is 60 days after the autumnal equinox, 60 days after the beginning of fall, if you will. Okay. So let's.
Probably has to do with the whole process of harvesting, like or planting. First, they start setting
we're guessing.
things up. I'm guessing.
We're guessing. We're all guessing, right? And to complicate matters, what was a time that was appropriate for Bavel
Right.
is not necessarily a time that's appropriate for the
South
United
Africa,
States
for
or for
sure.
South Africa,
Right, I mean-
right? Not at all a time to be davening for rain. And yet, nevertheless, what happens? We all daven for rain at the time that Iraq needs the rain, right? It's a little bit bizarre, right? Iraq and Iran are what determine when Jews in America start asking for rain. When they need rain, has nothing to do with when we need rain, has to do with when they need rain. Why didn't Chazal allow every community to make its own date? It obviously would have become a nightmare scenario for every community to have its own date. And, the expression is it would have led to two Torahs. In other words, it would have led to two Torahs. It would have led to a divide among the people that would have been very difficult to accommodate. Okay, so when is the autumnal equinox? So let's open up the calendars. Okay, the autumnal equinox is, I believe, September 21st? No, not September 21st.
It doesn't say here.
No, it does not say here,
That
right?
would be my-
It's actually October 7th. October 7th, let's see. Well, okay, so I have to tell you how we'll get there. So generally, September 23rd is the autumnal equinox, September 23rd. So let's look at September 23rd, okay? September 23rd comes out on Sunday, right? That is the autumnal equinox. And if we say 60 days after that autumnal equinox, counting that as day one, when is 60 days?
November 22nd?
Okay, so November 22nd is correct, okay? That 60 days after September 20, what do we say, September 23rd, 60 days after September 23rd is actually November 21st. That is the 60th day.
September is only 30?
Yeah.
30 days has September.
7,
Okay, go ahead, count.
38.
November
No,
20th.
22nd.
Okay, count. So
You're
September
counting
20,
the 23rd as
23rd
day?
is day, one
Okay,
day,
so then it's 8. Okay, I get it.
right? It's one
Yeah.
day. So the 60th day is
21. Okay.
November 21. Okay, so that would mean that we should begin saying V'tein Tal Umatar Livracha on November 21. But we don't. Why not?
Because of leap years.
Okay, so even leap years,
No, because of centuries. not leap years.
Okay, so actually, even more than centuries. Okay, even more than centuries. And this we need a little bit of astronomical science here. How long is a year? How long is a year?
We observe a year for 365 days in the non-Jewish calendar and 350 something in the
How
Jewish
long? Okay, so how long is a solar year?
365 and a quarter.
and a quarter.
Okay.
Right.
365 and a quarter. That is actually an opinion which is mentioned by Shmuel in the Gemara, 365 and a quarter. And it is opinion that most people followed. 365 and a quarter is 365 days and 6 hours. There is a second opinion which is given in the Gemara, which is a little bit more, which is a little bit closer to the actual length of a year, which is 365 days, 5 hours, 56 minutes and something. All right? But the actual time of a year, right? The actual length of a year is, you ready for this? 365 days, 5 hours, 48 minutes, and 46 seconds. That is the actual length of it, the actual scientific length of a year. Okay? Now, what does that mean? So, a year of 365 and a quarter days, which is what we generally use. So that year is how much longer, that measurement of 365 days, 6 hours, is how much longer than an actual year. The actual year is 365 days, so there's no difference there. 5 hours.
48 minutes and 46 seconds.
Right, 5 hours, 48 minutes, and 46 seconds. So what's the difference? 48 minutes,
5 hours, 48 minutes and 46 seconds.
right? So the difference
So
between
11 minutes and whatever.
11 and
12
11 and
seconds or whatever
change,
it was, yeah.
right? 11 and change, 11 minutes, 20 seconds, or something like that, right? Whatever. So that means that every year is longer. Every year is long. Every year that we observe is 11 days plus some change. Let's call it I don't know. We'll call it 11 days. Just 11 days longer than an actual solar year, than the actual measured solar year.
11 minutes long.
11 minutes longer. I'm sorry. 11 minutes longer than an actual solar year. Does anybody care about that?
Eventually you care about it.
So who cared about it?
Obviously Chazal cared about it when they were doing this, but
Actually, Chazal did not care about it.
well, okay, so what you have
Who
is you
cared
have a
about
leap
it?
year.
The
you have-
farmers.
The farmers. You have a leap year every 4 years, so you come back. And then every 100 years, you skip the leap year, so you...
Okay, so where did that calendar innovation come from?
I thought that was a Roman thing.
It is called the Gregorian calendar, named after the Pope, or a Pope, Pope Gregory. It's called the Gregorian calendar. Before that, what was the calendar called? The Julian calendar. It was the Julian calendar up until 1582, and then it became the Gregorian calendar. What happened what's the difference between those two calendars? So actually what happened was that in the non-Jewish world, particularly the Christian world, whose holiday seasons correspond to the solar year, the Pope calculated that they were 10 days off. In other words, having allowed everything to just continue the way it was, even with a leap year, because a leap year takes care of the 6 hours,
but not
right?
the 11 minutes.
But not the 11 minutes, right? So over thousands of years, the calendar became 10 days off. Right? The calendar was 10 days off. So how did they deal with that? It was an elegant solution. Elegant solution. The Gregorian calendar, I'll just share this with you, right? The Gregorian calendar went to, people went to sleep October 4th, 1582, and they woke up to October 15th, 1582. In other words, what did the Gregorian calendar do? It simply added 10 days to the calendar. Just made those 10 days disappear. Right? Those 10 days disappeared. And by doing that, what did the Christian world do? The Christian world adjusted the year, the dates, to compensate for the amount of time that the solar year had been longer. So it was
What year did this take place?
1582.
So add 10 days.
So like in 500 years from now, they're gonna need to do it again.
So wait a second. So Simon is correct, right? That if every year we're losing 11 minutes, so how do we deal with that? So the Christians built that into the system by saying that every leap year, which is not divisible by 400, will not be a leap year, right? So every leap year that we observe is divisible by 4, correct? Mm-hmm. That's by definition. Mm-hmm. Every leap year that we observe is divisible by 4. When is the next leap year?
Not this year.
Not this year, correct.
2020 is divisible by 4.
2020, right? 2020, okay? Right, 2020 is the next leap year. Every leap year is divisible by 4. However, on those years which are supposed to be leap years, because they are divisible by 4, but were not divisible by 400, that year was not observed as a leap year. Okay? So let's just think, what does that mean? So this change was made in 1582. So
1600.
1600,
No,
right?
2000.
What happened at 1600?
It wasn't.
Is 1600 divided by 4? By 400? Is 1600 divisible by
Yes.
400? Yes. So it was a leap year.
Right.
So 1600 was a leap year. What about 1700?
No.
So the year 1700 was not a leap year, even though it should have been a leap year. In other words, the year 1696 was a leap year. 1700 should have been a leap year, but it wasn't. And 1704 was the next leap year. So by not having a leap year, what happened? Right? So that's one. So 1700 is not divisible by 4. 1800
No.
is not divisible by 4 either. 1900 not divisible by 4.
2000.
Right?
Yes.
2000 is. So within 400 years, we miss 3 leap years. We miss 3 leap years within 400 years. If by observing leap years, we are adding on approximately 11 minutes. What?
3. 1600.
1700, 1800, 1900.
Ah, yes. Okay.
In 400 years,
Right.
3 leap
Sorry,
years
right.
3 leap years are gone. Okay, what does that do? That keeps the calendar in relative sync, because remember, even though the Pope got rid of those 10 days, he didn't change the 365 and a quarter perception. And they still had leap years to make up for that. So the years were going to start all over again, getting longer. And Simon is right, that after a certain amount of time, what were they going to have to do? They were going to have to get rid of another, right after a few thousand years, they have to get rid of another 10 days. So built into this system was that three leap years within 400 years would not be observed as leap years. So that means we would gain 3 days. Because what does a leap year do? A leap year adds a day to the calendar, right? If it is a leap year, there is February 29th. If there is no leap year, it's February 28th. So a leap year adds a day to a calendar. So we essentially remove 3 days in 400 years. So if somebody, I don't know if you want to do this in your head, 11 minutes a year times 400 is how many days? Eleven minutes times 400 is what?
11 times 400. Oh, I did that wrong.
4,400 minutes. No?
11 times 400 equals
10
4,400
days.
minutes.
Divided by
11
60.
Divided by 60 is 73.333. And I need to do divided by 24.
Right.
No. Yeah.
Yep.
3.055555.
Right, 3 days. Exactly right, right? So in 400 years, the calendar will have moved ahead 3 days. How did they accommodate for those 3 days? By skipping 3 leap years. So by skipping 3 leap years, what happened? The calendar, right, is relatively in sync. As you see, 3.0, so it's not 100% in sync, but it's relatively in sync, okay? So we maintain the 365 days, 6 hours as our shear for the year, and it relatively stays in sync. However, let's now put ourselves in the position of the Jewish community. Right.
Kufat Tishrei is
Right.
still the same place.
Tekufat Tishrei doesn't change. In other words, the equinox, the astronomical phenomenon doesn't change. All the Pope did was change the calendar. He didn't change the astronomy of the world. So that means that we were until 1582. We were saying V'tein tal u'matar livracha 60 days after September 21st, which brought us to November. What did we say? November 60 days after September 23rd, which brought us to November 21st. November 21st. Now the Pope decided that November 21st isn't November 21st anymore. What is November 21st?
December.
Right, November 21st plus 11 days, which makes it
Plus 10 days was December 1.
November 21st plus 10 days in 1582, which made it what?
December 1, I think.
Which made it December 2? I think December 2.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. No. What did we have? Oh, I'm looking at the wrong month.
November 22nd.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. December 1.
Okay, December 1. Now,
Plus the 4.
now wait a second.
3 days.
Right, now wait a second. So that's
December 4th.
so in 1582 they started observing it, started saying V'tein tal u'matar livracha, not on November 23rd, which was 60 days after the Tekufa on the calendar, but rather on December 1st, which was still 60 days after Tekufas Tishrei, right? December 1st. So you see how it went from November 3rd, from November 21st, from November 21st to November 21st to December 1st, right? That's what we're saying? 10 days. November 21st to December 1st, 10 days, okay? Good, so what happened? So that was fine for 1583, 1584, 1585, but what happened in 1700? In 1700, the world at the time did not observe a leap year in order to catch the calendar up. But that didn't change our calculations. So instead of December 1st, it now became December 2nd. And in 1800, which also the world did not observe a leap year in 1800, So we had to make up for that distinction. So we went from December 2nd to December 3rd. And in 1900, okay, in 1900, when the world did not observe a leap year, what happened? We went from December 3rd to December 4th. What happened in 2000?
We observed the leap
In
year.
2000, we observed a leap year. So we haven't lost anything yet. So we're holding by December 4th, right? It came out on December 1st. We added for 1700 December 2nd, for 1800 December 3rd, for 1900 December 4th, and we're still holding by December 4th.
So you're
Okay.
2100, we go to December 5th.
Right, so in the year 2100, we will go to December 5th. Now, the truth is, it's not just December 4th, it's December 4th slash 5th. And it won't be in 2100 just December 5th, it will be December 5th slash 6th. What makes that determination?
Well, we do Marav at night.
Okay, here we go. I'm going to share this with you, and I hope you don't mind that I'm doing this because it's hard for me to even keep it in my head. Okay, the following. Seems on the surface pretty easy to. Okay. So. So if we say that, so we said that Tekufas Tishrei was September 23rd. But when is Tekufas Tishrei today? It's not September 23rd anymore. When is Tekufas Tishrei today? September 23rd and 10 days. So what is it? October 7th. So Tekufas Tishrei is observed October 7th. That started in 1583. In 1581, or I'm not sure when in 1582, which we went on. In 1582, Tekufas Tishrei was September 23rd. But in 1583 and onwards to our year, when is Tekufas Tishrei? September 23rd plus 10 days is October 7th. So October 7th is Tekufas Tishrei, okay? Now, if we believe the year is 365 days and 6 hours long, so how long is a quarter of that? How long is a quarter of that?
90. 91 and a quarter. Four times 9 is 36.
Right.
91
and a
and
quarter.
15, like,
Yeah, 91 and a quarter.
Right, 91 and a quarter. Okay, so well, basically, so the easiest way to think about it is each tekufa moves ahead 6 hours. That makes sense? So whatever the tekufa is this year, whatever time of day the tekufa begins this year, next year it will begin
6 hours.
6 hours later. Okay, next year it will begin 6 hours later. And the year after that it will begin 6 hours later, and the year after that it will begin 6 hours later. Okay? So those,
Like about. Let's see what this is.
So every
now.
4 years it resets.
so every 4 years it resets. That's exactly right. Right?
So
Every 4 years
we're
it
past. What? Because we're past 12, we.
So it's December 4th, December 4th, December 4th, December 5th.
Correct. Right? In other words, December 4th, December 4th, December 4th, because it grows by 3 hours, right? December 4th, December 4th, December 4th. And then it's no longer, right, December 4th, now it's December 5th, which is the year before the leap year. Because what does the leap year do? The leap year resets it to December 4th. So the reason we do it is always December 4th, unless it's the year before a leap year, and the year before a leap year we observe it on December 5th, because the Tekufa is falling out December
4th and 18 hours.
Correct. December 4th, exactly right. December 4th and 18 hours, which is moving it into December 5th. Right, and then the next year we go back. So that's why sometimes it's observed on December 4th and sometimes on December 5th. What will happen in 2100, unless Mashiach, Mirz Hashem Mashiach will be here, we won't have to deal with it, or else all of Great Neck will December 5th and December 6th. We'll go to December 5th and December 6th. So you see, so we're a long way from 7 Mar Cheshvan. Factor number 1 is that we go by Bavel. Factor number 2 is that Bavel was 60 days past Tekufas Tishrei. Factor number 3 is that they changed the calendar on us. They added 10 days to the calendar. Factor number 4 is in that when adding those 10 days to the calendar, they took away 3 days of leap years in 400 years. When all of those factors come together, that brings us to December 4th and 5th, which is when we start saying B'tein Talamat Alivracha now. A little bit complicated, but I hope it made some sense. Yes? Mm-hmm. No? Maybe?
It made sense.
Right?
I wouldn't be able to repeat it, but it makes...
Okay. All right, good. I mean, can I tell you something? Every year I go over it again, and every year it's always like, wait a second, I learned this. Like I said it over last year. We'll see. I'll say it over again at Shela Shudas. Right? We'll see what happens. Okay, let's go to the Gemara. And there are some, there's some variations on this, based on dates and everything else. But that's basically how it operates. Okay. We are on Yudches Amud Beis. Counting up from where the lines get wide. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines up. The last words we learned were Nahara Pashte, which essentially means that
all the rivers go in there.
Right, that each river goes in its own direction, meaning each community observes its own particular minhag. Okay, now the Gemara continues. The Gemara says, now we're back to the Chullin stuff. So Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. What happened? What did he do? Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish says the Gemara, Achshar bechuda de kuvai. What shchita did Reish Lakish machshir? He machshir the shchita which was bechuda de kovai. What does the chuda de kovai mean? What is the kova?
The kova.
Right. So you remember what the kova was?
Yeah, it's at the
right?
top of the chitim.
Right.
Basically.
So the top of the chitim, which is I guess the top of the kana, right? The top of the kana is shaped like a helmet, a little bit, like one of these things, right? Shaped like that. That's called the kova. And Reish Lakish allowed there to be he said it was a kosher shchita if it was bechuda de kova. Chuda de kova means the point at the top of the helmet. What is the point at the top of the helmet? So look at note 24, right? The thyroid cartilage, which is above the trachea, tapers upward in the direction of the larynx, thus appearing like a helmet on a head. Okay, the sloping side of this cartilage is called shipui kova. So we've seen that already. And its peak is termed chuda de kova. So that would seem to be the furthest most, the topmost point of the kana, correct? other words, once you're past that point,
Above the Kaneh, but yes. I guess if you're calling all of the Kova Kaneh.
if you're calling all of the Kova Kaneh,
Yes.
so then this is the top point, the furthest towards the head point of the Kaneh. Okay? So this is already a relatively far, I was going to say far out position, right? Because it's, we were talking about the Tabaz Gedola. This is way above. I mean, way in an animal. We're not only talking a little bit, but way above the Tabaz Gedola. So what did they? So Kari Aleha Rabbi Yochanan. So what did Rabbi Yochanan say to him? Rabbi Yochanan said to him, Gisa Gisa. Gisa Gisa means, forget it. You've crossed the line. Right? It's too far. You've gone beyond that which is acceptable. Look at Rashi at the bottom. Right, 3 lines up, Rashi says, Gisa Gisa is basically saying Hagas Kolomar Yoser Midai Hechshera de Ein Kosher Afilu Rabbi Chanina Ella Mimakom Shechidudu Maschio La'alos. So in other words, Reish Lakish had his halachic position was that as long as it was touching any part of what could conceivably be called the Kaneh, the Shechita was valid. That was Reish Lakish's opinion, and it seems that was not accepted because Kara Alei, Rabbi Yochanan said about him, this is too far, because what we've learned is the furthest part that you could go was the beginning of the Shipua. In other words, the beginning of where it starts to slope upwards, the beginning of the Shipua. And the Gemara continues with that. Amar Rav Papi Mishmei de Rava. Rav Papi said in the name of Rava, Paga bechiti treifa. That if your knife touches the chiti, so then it is a treifa, right? Have any of you seen chiti in an animal? Have you seen the vocal cords actually?
Yeah, you could see them.
Right? You could theoretically see them if you, look at the head, look down, right into the head. You could theoretically see them. Okay, but if you cut into the chiti, which is the chiti begin right after the shipua of the kova. If you cut into the chipi, if you go above the shipua of where the shipua of the kova begins, so then it's treifa. So Ibai Luhu. So they asked, this was Rav Papi's position. So Ibai Luhu, they asked Rav Papi the following question. Paga v'naga bahen, right? Dichsiv vayifka bo vayamas. O dilma paga velo naga dichsiv vayifka uvo malchei elokim. What is the question that they're asking here to Rav Papi? Okay, what does paga v'naga mean? So we said, right? Look at what Rav Papi says. Paga bechiti. Right? How do you translate paga?
Touched.
To touch. All right. Generally here, it would probably be more correctly translated as reached. You reached the chiti. So what does it mean you reached the chiti? Does it mean paga v'naga? That you reached and actually your knife actually cut into the chiti? Or does it mean paga velo naga, meaning your knife did not actually cut the chiti, but went into, reached as far up as it could go. It didn't. Basically, they're asking Rav Papi, do you require the knife to touch the chiti, to actually cut the chiti, in order for the shchita to be considered invalid? That was the question. Paga v'naga or paga velo naga? Now, what does this paga v'naga and paga velo naga mean? So, paga v'naga, right? Meaning that not only did he reach the chiti, but he actually cut into the chiti, actually touched the chiti. So what does that learn from dichsiv? Because we see in Torah there are two uses of the word paga, right? One use implies reaching and touching. One verse implies reaching but not touching. So which is the verse that implies reaching and touching? So that was what the first part is. Ibayluhu paga v'naga vahen dichsiv vayifka bo vayamas. What is vayifka bo vayamas? What is that talking about?
It says here that it's from Shlomo Amelech, Vayishlach Amelech Shlomo beyad Benayahu ben Yehoyada, Vayifka bo Vayamat.
So what does it mean vayifka bo vayamat?
Well, it means he kills him.
How does he kills him? Obviously, he kills him because vayifka bo means he reached
the
him.
sword reaches and
touches. Right? He reached him and killed. In other words, if his sword had just reached him, but if it was paga velo naga, he would not have killed him. The fact that it was paga vinaga, or the fact that he killed him means that it was paga vinaga, right? So that's why that pasuk is quoted, right? Paga vinaga from the pasuk of Vayifka bo vayamas. O dilma paga velo naga. And what is this pasuk? This is a pasuk from Bereshis. Vayifku bo malachei Elokim. What does it mean? Vayifku bo malachei Elokim. What was that referring to?
Vayakov halach ledarko. This is where he wrestles with the angel. Lamed bet pasuk bet.
Do we have the whole pasuk here on the page?
Vayakov halach ledarko vayifku bo malachei Elokim.
Right. So this was after he struggled with the angel, right? And now he's traveling, right? He left and he's traveling. Vayifka bo malachei Elokim. They didn't touch him, right? They didn't harm him. They reached him. So that's paga velo naga.
Am I not remembering this?
Paga velo naga.
Where does Yaakov get encountered?
Look at Rashi. Did you look at Rashi?
No.
Oh, Rashi's just telling us.
Where does Yaakov get touched by multiple angels other than...
He's not getting touched. That's the whole point.
No,
The point is that he's
reached
not
by-
getting touched. Right? He's not getting touched. The pasuk. You have the whole pasuk, and I don't have the pasuk
Yeah.
in my Gemara.
Vayakov halach ledarko, vayifku vo malachei Elokim.
Okay.
But that has to be... Vayakov halach ledarko has to be after Esav.
Correct.
Who does he encounter then? I don't remember that.
I believe that is... Isn't that the... Isn't this the malachim that he sends to Esav?
I guess.
Well, now that I have everything
With your fingertips.
at my fingertips. Of course, when it works. What's the pasuk, Natan?
Lamed bet pasuk bet.
Vayishlach, so, yeah, this is right before the Vayish, this is the end of Vayakov halach l'darko, v'yifku bo malachei Elokim, Vayomer Yaakov ka'asher ra'am machanei Elokim zeh, v'yikra shem ha'makom hahu machanayim. Words, he reached the
This
angels.
is where he does the two camps?
No. This is afterwards. This is all afterwards, right? He's
remembering this incident.
right.
I'll have to pay closer attention in a few weeks. I don't remember this one.
Go back to the whole next parak. Okay. It's the prelude to Vayishlach, where he has the malachim to send to greet his brother Esav.
Okay.
Okay? It's after the incident of the Malach.
After he changes his name to Yisrael.
Correct. Okay. So the Gemara is asking, what is the meaning of paga? When Rav Papi said that paga b'chiti treifa, does it mean paga v'naga, that you actually have to, your knife actually has to touch the chiti, which I assume would cut them? Or does it mean paga v'lo naga, that if you reach through everything and you are now at the chiti, then it would be considered a treifa? Paga v'naga, paga v'lo naga. That's the question which is asked. So Amar Rav Papa Mishmei de Rava. So Rav Papa, in the name of Rava, answers and says, Shir bechiti kshera. What does shir bechiti kshera mean? That if he left over a little bit, then it is considered kshera. Look at Rashi at the bottom. Shir bechiti hiniach miktsas litzad harosh umiktsas litzad hakaneh kagon shechatcho dahainu paga v'naga. So what does he say? That according to this opinion, according to what Rav Papa is answering, when Rav Papi said paga bechiti treifa, what is he referring to? He's referring to paga v'naga. Because what does Rav Papa say? Rav Papa says, Mishmei de Rava, shir bechiti kshera. That if you left over, if you actually cut into the chiti, right? When you cut into the chiti, what would happen? So you would cut into the chiti, there would be some below where you cut and some above where you cut, right? So that's the idea of shir bachiti. So he says shir bachiti is kshera. So the machlokas has to be in the question of paga v'naga. In other words, the machlokas, whether it's kshera or treifa, is in the question of paga v'naga. In other words, if you just get into it, just paga v'lo naga. In other words, you get through the, you go.
You're right at the top of the tabat hagedola, but you don't go into the chitin, then it's kosher. But if you go into the chitin, then
now we have a machlokas.
Right.
If you go into the chitin, now we have a machlokas. And if you go all the way to the top, to the point, right, of the kova, which is at the past the chiti, right, all the way to the top of the kova past the chiti, it seems that everybody says, except for Reish Lakish's opinion, everybody says that's not considered valid. How practical is this in shchita?
This kind of, there are people who get too high up, especially young shochtim. You get too high up.
Too high meaning above the chiti?
Yeah, but we wouldn't we would osir this. Like if you got above the tabat hagedola on a chicken, let's say, we would just osir it. We would say no way. But that happens, and like that you could be right at the top of the tabat hagedola. That could happen.
And is the top of the tabat gedola so distinct? I mean, you can see it where it's so distinct.
Kind of. The tabat hagedola is distinct. The tabat hagedola itself is distinct, and the shipui kova is also distinct. The chitin are inside, so it's harder to
inside the kova.
So it's harder to really see. But they're like you can kind of tell. You can kind of tell when you got too high up above the tabat hagedola.
Yeah. So you've seen shchitas that were above the tabat gedola.
Seen, done, yeah, sure. Yeah.
Especially with the young guys.
Yeah, when
they don't
learning,
have a good tfisa.
When you're just learning, you don't have a good tfisa.
Natanelli one time he was arguing on
Yeah.
Because you don't have a good tfisa on the neck.
Because you don't have a good tfisa, and when you put down your knife, sometimes you like...
The knife goes all over the place.
You kind of go like this. You kind of turn it, angle it.
Right.
And we're talking about, less than a centimeter. So if you turn it the wrong way, if you turn on an angle as you're putting your hand down, you could end up in the wrong spot. So yeah, it's kind of...
So you're
It's-
not only
it's-
checking to see that the kana has been completely or cut through, or at least robe of it has been cut, you're also looking to see where on the kana that it
Definitely.
is.
Definitely. And look, if you can push on the shipui and it pops out and then kind of retracts afterwards, you can tell that you are not too high up.
Because if you were into the shipui,
It wouldn't go back.
it wouldn't go back in, or it wouldn't even come out sometimes. It depends how you do it. So, is it practical? People miss the spot. Hagrama is an issue. I don't think that we would. Simcha Hadasha records the opinion that in the Chitin there's a question, but I don't think any of us today would go with that. They say something like Baal Nefesh Lo Yochal Mimenu, so we just.
Okay, good. So this is Lamaisa here. We see these different opinions. And what's interesting is that obviously, there was not a set, you have from Reish Lakish's opinion all the way at the top of the Kova, all the way through, all the way down, I guess, these different opinions. Okay, good. I think I'm late. I apologize. We're going to stop here.
It's good.